Hello everybody, my name is Sean O'Callaghan and I'm Chairman of Courcey Rovers GA Club. On behalf of our club, I want to welcome you to this evening's wellness event. The purpose of this webinar is to have an open and honest discussion on emotional well-being and personal growth. In addition, we want people in difficulty to understand that you're not alone. In the spirit of our hashtag Talk to Somebody, we will at various intervals in tonight's event and indeed afterwards signpost where you can find services to help you. Please look out for this detail. An event like this needs to reflect a broader collaboration across our community. In this regard, Courcey Rovers are delighted to partner with Kinsale Community School, Kinsale Youth Support Services and GAA Healthy Club Programme. Many thanks and enjoy the event.
Hello, my name is Brian Barry. I am the chairperson of Courcey Rovers, Camogie and Ladies Football Club. On behalf of the club, I want to thank you for giving your time this evening to access this wellbeing webinar. We are all of us on the same journey when it comes to our emotional well-being. We hope that you will enjoy tonight's discussion, find it helpful, find it informative, find it supportive, and hope that it will serve as a reminder that there is a shared strength in community, in our community, and should it be needed, that there is always someone you can talk to. I'd like to pass you over now to our hostess for this evening, Claire, who will introduce our contributors and take you through the format for this evening.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our community wellness event. With the journey comes emotional health. Wherever you are logging in from, thank you for joining us for what promises to be a very informative, thought-provoking and nurturing night. My name is Claire Sheehan, Deputy Principal of Kinsale Community School, and I am your compere for this evening's event. We are all here tonight as the good people of Courcey Rovers GA had a fantastic idea. This idea was developed and collaboration took place between Kinsale Youth Support Services and Kinsale Community School. It is a community event. Many people have worked tirelessly to ensure you as the audience leave here tonight with an important message. That message is our event hashtag, Talk to Someone. We are very lucky to have many guests who have joined us to have an open and honest discussion about nurturing emotional well-being and personal growth. We will begin this evening with the main event, which is a conversation with Conor Cusack. Conor needs no introduction. He is a Cloyne GA man, a great hurling stronghold. He represented Cloyne at all levels and was a member of the Cork senior hurling team in the noughties. Conor is well known as an emotional health advocate. He has spoken across the country and has addressed audiences on national television. He tells you his own truthful story tonight and emphasizes the importance of emotional health on each of our journeys. I know you will all find this evening's conversation with Conor to be inspiring and you will leave it feeling hopeful. Conor is being interviewed this evening by Niall Murphy, a passionate Courcey Rovers clubman, and Elaine Hines, career guidance counsellor in Kinsale Further Education College. Following this conversation, we will have a Q&A session where I will be joined by Geraldine McTavish, Diversity and Inclusion Officer in the Community Health Department of Croke Park, Ger Rice, Health Support Worker of Kinsale Youth Support Services, Gary Maloney, Courcey Rovers Juvenile Chairman, Linda Collins, Courcey Rovers and Cork Senior Camogie Captain, along with Charlie Granger, a sixth-year student in Kinsale Community School. Throughout this webinar, we will take some time to display slides which have the numbers of very important services, which all of you may find useful and beneficial at some point. We would display these at various stages. You can screenshot them on your phone or write down the numbers. These reinforce the importance and the key message of tonight's event. Talk to someone. I'll now hand you over to Niall, Elaine and Conor, so sit back and enjoy the night.
Great. Hey everyone,
Hello.
welcome.
Folks.
How are you doing? Elaine, how are you?
I'm good now. Yeah.
Nervous?
Yeah. Nervous.
Yeah, good.
It's a stretch
Good.
for me here now. I'm stretching myself. The growth starts right now.
Right now, yeah. As Conor said beforehand, if you're nervous, it matters, and that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Conor, I know Elaine over 30 years. So when I was very small and I was starting going to the hurling field with my mother, I was tagging along behind my mother going camogie training, and we had a young camogie club at the time, and they were just going up through the grades, and they were novice and they were doing to be in that, and Elaine was a young teenager on those teams, right? With a broad spectrum of players with different ages and different places. But I don't think Elaine would have envisaged that 30 years later that we'd be speaking to County Cork and the rest of the parish about emotional health.
We definitely didn't predict that one.
No.
That's for sure. They were great days, the junior B days. I think I was 14 or something when I started playing camogie, and it was junior B was the only grade we had, but we had great crack. I just remember the mixture of people was fantastic.
Yeah.
I don't remember you there, no.
That's it. You left an impression on me, Elaine.
Yeah.
Conor, we'll jump in, right? And I suppose on behalf of the people of Courceys, and thanks Claire for the great introduction, right? On behalf of the people of Courceys, welcome, right? We'll take it handy on you. So take it handy on us. So Conor, let's just throw the ball in here, okay? So clearly you're very experienced.
That's a good start. The lights are going off here on the plant.
You're all right. You're doing grand. Look, emotional health advocate. You spoke on Miriam O'Callaghan, spoke on Tuberty. You've gone all over the world. You just told us a story about being in New York just beforehand. I was speaking on this topic, right? So, like, let's just leave that to one side for a moment, and I just want to get to know. I just want to ask you about you, right? About Cloyne, about home, about your youth. So let's leave all the emotional health bit to one side for a moment. Maybe just give about yourself. Who is Conor Cusack? What makes him tick? And we'll start in there.
I've been trying for the last 20 years on a journey of trying to find out who I am. It was probably more finding about who I wasn't initially, and now about finding out who I am. So firstly, Elaine, Niall, it's really great to be here. Thanks so much for inviting me. I'm really looking forward to the conversation. I'd say equally looking forward to the Q&A afterwards. There's a superb gathering of speakers in the event after us, and I'm as much looking forward to learning from you, both of you, and the rest of the people on the evening, as much as the little bit that I might contribute to it. My last direct engagement with Courcey Rovers was a senior hurling league game on an absolutely beautiful St. Patrick's morning a few years ago. I remember getting a nice clip during the game. It was from one of the Lordens. No, it might have been Timmy, but I don't want to be wrong on him. I'm not 100% sure. And I clearly remember in the second half tearing my hamstring very, very badly. So at least this evening, from a physical health point of view, I'm safe enough when it comes to emotional health. That's another story. We'll see how the questions go. And look, just quickly before we go into the conversation, there can nearly be an assumption that because I've spoken so openly, about my own experiences with my emotional health and depression, that I now have all the issues solved in my life, and that's certainly not the case. I fail often and regularly in this area, and there can nearly be an assumption as well that I'm this constantly warm and kind human being, and I'm not always kind to myself, and I'm not always kind to other people. Those moments when I'm not dealing with my own emotional pain, I can project those onto others. So, I describe myself as a continuous work in progress, and very similar to the first night that I spoke to Miriam O'Callaghan on prime time, where the very first words I said was, that I'm not here to promote myself as a pillar of the community. I'm not a professional working in this area. I'm just an ordinary pilgrim, I suppose, on the path of trying to deepen my own understanding and all of our understanding around our complex inner worlds. And so I'm just here this evening, as I say, to not promote myself as any pillar of the community, because I'm certainly not that. Yeah, so look, I was born in Clyne, my parents' home, back down to the hurling field. That's where I spent most of my youth, with my brothers playing hurling. My sister was into sport, but not too much into playing the hurling, and she would have been a lot younger than us as well. My dad comes from a family of 13. All of his brothers would have played hurling with Clyne. My dad would have played minor with Clyne and with under 21. Minor under 21 with Cork. On my mum's side, there's 16 in the family, and the 14 sons and daughters all played GA and Camogie. The 7 boys played with Clyne, and the seven sisters, my mum and her 6 sisters, were all on the last Clyne Camogie team to win a county title. And my mum's sisters, Bernadette and Kathleen and Marie, would have played Camogie with Cork and won senior All-Irelands with them. Marie probably being the most well-known, being on the team of the century and the team of the millennium. So I was surrounded and engulfed, I suppose, by hurling at an early age, and that certainly brought many benefits to me, but also brought some challenges that we might touch on later on. And yeah, at the moment, I work as a projects manager in a multinational. It's a really challenging and demanding role, but always interesting, and every day is a learning day. So yeah, that's just a brief background to myself.
It's good. And where do you come in the family, Conor?
So I'm the second. Yeah, the second. Donald would be the oldest. I'm the second. Then Victor and Tressa would be both younger than me.
Okay. So Donald, Conor, Tressa, what was going on that decided to come up with a name called Victor? Victor, it's a different it's a different name.
They named him well. He's his own man
and he's a nice man. I know him well.
In all ways.
I often wondered where they got Victor from with the rest of the names. But that's why I hope he's listening tonight. I hope he's well. So right. So Conor, help us understand, right? So just there'll be people watching tonight who don't know you, who would have seen you on a poster, who didn't see you hurl, people from a different generation. What makes you qualified? And sorry, qualified. Right? What makes you qualified to be an emotional health advocate, right? Because we know you're not a qualified person in this field, right? But just what's your, why are you here? How in that respect?
So I never gave myself the label emotional health advocate. I think it was the media and others that would have given that to me. That's certainly not something that I'd maybe describe myself as. So yeah, I suppose if I went back to my mid-teens when I was inside in secondary school, I suppose I would have started to experience these situations and scenarios where I was getting very much caught for breath and seemed to be getting overwhelmed and feeling like as if that it's difficult to describe what a panic attack is, but it's like as if a snake is after wrapping itself around your chest, and that where you were previously breathing nice and normally, suddenly it's like the wind has gone out of you, and that you're struggling for breath, and that started to happen in my mid-teens, and I really didn't know what it was, to be honest, and it progressed along to where this darkness started to enter my life, to the point of I would have been a very sociable person. I would have had the capacity to get on with people from all walks of life. But this darkness started to enter my life, and again, I had no idea, to be honest, what it was. Back then, it might be different for some people on the phone, but back then, or on the call tonight, but back then, a mobile phone was this huge device, and there was no internet or little or no internet, and there was definitely no discussion around emotional or mental health back in those days. So in many ways, I was very much on my own because I had no idea what was happening for me. And it progressed on to the point that when I got into Leaving Cert year, where I'd always enjoyed my studies, I'd always enjoyed hurling, I'd always enjoyed being with my friends, that suddenly those things started, that joy started to go from my life. And I had to leave school at the start of Leaving Cert because I was so overwhelmed by this darkness that was known in my life. And I left it to actually go into the workplace and begin an apprenticeship. And I can recall, you know, a panic attack by day is difficult enough, but a panic attack in the middle of the night while you're asleep takes on an added horror. And I can recall back in that period, you know, where I'd wake at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and I'd be gasping for breath. And I can remember that I was absolutely terrified of the world at that time. I didn't want to be a part of the world. And I can remember the tears rolling down my face and gathering the sweat on my skin from the panic attacks, and literally gathering in a boy-made lake at the edge of my feet. And one of the very last things I used to do every morning before leaving to go to work was to get towels to wipe up the tears and the sweat that would be gathered at my feet. And I can remember clearly when I'd be going into work on my Honda 50 at the time. People won't remember Honda 50s, but they were one of the greatest inventions of all time. Put €2 into it there and it would run away for the fortnight, and it was a magnificent machine. But I can recall when I'd be going into work on my bike, and my friends would be passing me in their cars, going to college and waving to me, and going to where I really wanted to be honest myself. And I'd wave back at them, but little did they realise, or little did my family or everybody else realise, that behind the mask, the helmet that I was wearing, I was bellowing a bucket of tears, similar to behind the mask that I was wearing daily to everybody. And literally inside in the workplace, one day, you know, I literally collapsed in the middle of my workplace. And I could understand it because my mind was just so tormented and my body was so tormented. And I remember just not being able to put up the facade anymore, not having the energy to put it up, or not wanting to put it up, and literally collapsing on the floor. And my employer and the work colleagues could imagine them looking at this big grown young lad, and he collapsed on the floor crying, and they're taking me home. And I can remember, obviously, my parents had no idea what was going on for me, because you don't have to go to Hollywood to find the best actors. The best actors were all around us, and we're magnificent actors ourselves in terms of being able to hide what's really going on for us. And it was definitely a shock to my family when I came home and I was in the condition that I was in. And so my family then spent a lot of time and a lot of money taking me around to different places to see different people and different doctors, because I obviously had an awful lot of physical symptoms. And all the different, went into hospital for 2 weeks, and at the end of 2 weeks of testing, this doctor or whoever came to my bed and said, Conor, look, you're suffering from depression. And that's what she said, and was gone again as quickly. And I'd never heard of this. My parents had never heard of it. And I was put into the psychiatric system in the sense of I was appointed to work with a psychiatrist. And I can recall the very first day going in to meet that person. And it just felt to me that they were trying to, actually, an interesting thing happened as I was coming back out afterwards, after being in the session with the psychiatrist. There was people in the same building that had some intellectual challenges, and they were trying to put a round peg into a square hole. And it was symbolic for me in that I felt the psychiatrist was trying to pin me or peg me into this person that was suffering from manic depression, and that, yeah, these are your symptoms and this is the box that you fit into, and here's the medication for you now to go in and be sorted. And it just didn't feel right for me. It didn't feel right for me at all. And it was getting worse, to be honest. It was on a lot of medication. I was stuck in my bedroom at home. The world was continuing on outside, but I was dying a slow death inside my bedroom, and and it's difficult. It's difficult if you've experienced depression. Then I don't think there's any need to. I don't think there's a need to explain it, because you understand what it is. And if you haven't, I'm not too sure is there the adequate words to be able to explain what it is. But what I do remember at the time is that yeah, you know, I've had a lot of injuries playing GA. I've snapped cruciate ligaments. I've broken lots of bones in my hands. I had all my mouth destroyed by a dangerous pull in a game that destroyed my lips and blew out all my teeth. But I think the pain, the physical and emotional pain of depression, it paled in significance or in depth to the physical and emotional pain that I was experiencing with depression, where it practically permeates every part of your being, where you're tearing your hair and cutting yourself. I can remember cutting myself to try and give some kind of a physical expression to this inner emotional torture that I was experiencing, where it, you know, it wrecks your days, it wrecks your days and turns them into a living nightmare, and destroys your sleep, and where you get no rest at all from this continuous, where every thought is like a knife darting into your brain, and where you start to lose your sense of taste, where you start to lose a sense of, literally. And it's interesting that the lights went out at that time, where you lose that color and light, literally, metaphorically, like we just saw. You lose that light in your life, and you kind of question God to know, is there something that I done to deserve this torture that I'm going through, and why isn't He answering your pleas for relief? And so that's very much what my days and my nights and my experiences were. And sadly, the treatment I was getting from psychiatry and from medication wasn't working for me. And I can recall, you know, I was starting to significantly lose hope at that time. And when hope goes, I think in everything, it's the last thing I think to go. And when that goes, I think you're in serious trouble then. And I can recall being said to, look, we're going to take you to this other psychiatrist. We think he's going to be beneficial for you. And I went into him. His suggestion for me to get well was electroshock therapy, where they hook you up to wires and basically pump electricity through you. And I've worked as an electrician in my lifetime, and I've gotten electric shocks, and I can guarantee you there was never any one of those shocks was enjoyable. You never got a rattle off a wire and said, Christ, that felt wonderful. I'm going to go back here and grab on and get another rattle off it. And it still amazes me to this day that for a young lad that was an absolute chaos in his life, that there was still some part of me, still something inside me that had the ability to be able to tell him where to go. But I remember returning home, and it was like, that was it. That was the final straw. And I can recall very clearly waking one night in the middle of the night and saying, okay, that's it. I'm going to end my life. And an interesting thing happened when I done that. You know, there was a peace came into my existence and into my life that I hadn't experienced in years. And I can understand it well now, because, you know, my body and my mind that had been tortured for so many years now had a kind of a get out, and was saying, yeah, we're not going to have to endure this torture anymore. And I can remember going down to my dad's garage to cut some rope that I was going to use to hang myself. And I can remember the image that came into my mind as I was cutting the rope of there was two images that came into my mind, and there was an image of an umbilical cord. And ironically enough, an umbilical cord is something that gives life. And here I was, you know, with another rope in my hand that was going to end it. And I had it all planned, and I was actually so at peace. I think my family and my doctors thought that I was actually on the road to recovery, that I was, because of that peace that had started to come into me, but actually it was a total opposite. But I was really lucky that the evening I planned to drive out the house and to in my life, my mother never left the house that night to go to mass. All the rest of the family were gone to a match. And a couple of events happened then, and it wasn't that had gone out of my head and that I still hadn't those plans in my life. But a couple of very fortunate things happened for me then, where I had worked for Drina Allen as a younger person, and Drina is this really demanding individual when it comes to working in her gardens and her food and all the rest of it, but also very loyal. And I recall her asking my aunt how was Conor doing, and my aunt worked for Drina all her life, and my aunt said, no, you know what, Conor isn't doing too well at all, and I'm actually, it's a while since I've spoken about this, so I'm getting slightly emotional when I'm remembering the experience. But she said, I think I know of a psychologist that would be beneficial to Conor. And to be honest, I'd given up all hope at this stage, but my family just pleaded me to go one more time to try this individual. And I can recall going to see this man, and his rooms were on the side of his house. It was like a little cottage. And walking in, then there was a fire in the corner and nice warm seats, and it was totally opposite to all of those clinical white-walled buildings that I'd been going to through their psychiatric process and all of those doctors. And I recall sitting down in front of him, and where every other doctor and psychiatrist had asked me about what was my symptoms and what were my physical symptoms, I can recall sitting across from him, and he said, so Conor, yeah, I hear you haven't been well. So tell me your story. My God, tell me your story. The first person that had asked, what's actually going on behind the symptoms that you have. And it was a phenomenally powerful moment in my life, because as human beings, we're far more our stories than our symptoms. And I can recall going home that evening with my mother, and I was crying going home in the car, but it wasn't tears of sadness, it was tears of joy, because I just felt inside my inwardly that this is what I had been waiting for, this experience, and somebody to actually try to see what was going on behind the mask in my inner world. And it was an amazing first experience with him. And so through a long period of therapy, and you know, therapy is a really challenging experience. You know, I played in the full forward line in hurling all my life, and cornerbacks and fullbacks, by their very nature, aren't nice human beings. It's a particularly challenging part of the field to be playing in. And it's daunting. It's daunting going there. I played lots of times on my colleague Damon O'Sullivan, and you know, he's far from a gentle creature. But it all pales really in significance in terms of the courage that's needed to embark on what real therapy is. And Paulo Coelho says that, you know, a man and a person is at their most powerful when they're most willing to be vulnerable. And so it's not easy to sit across from somebody, but it's amazing when you take what's going on inside for you, and you take it from inside you and give visibility to the invisible, and put it out there in a sacred space where it's not being judged, and where you can see it in a different light to where you were before. It's an extraordinary thing. Maya Angelou, the American poet, says there's no greater agony than the bearing of an untold story within you. And it's just phenomenal when you can unburden yourself from that story that's going on for you. And yeah, so it was a long period of taking steps forward and steps backward, but through the efforts of working with Tony, and undeniably the extraordinary kindness and support from others, the unstinting love from my mother, who refused to give up on her son the support of the people. I can recall one of the first tasks when I was with Tony going through therapy was to start taking some steps outside the house. And I can recall just walking a few meters outside my home, and some of the old ladies incline, and they see me and they just wave me across the road and saying, "Conor, it's great to see you." And that was nourishment, like it was nourishment to my soul, and then my teammates incline, and the support they gave me. And that wasn't always verbal support. And I often wonder now in this current environment with COVID, you know, there's a language there's a hidden language in human touch. And I wonder with this COVID, what impact is the absence of that having on people? Because I can recall clearly when I was going back to training, and I was obviously very unfit, and really unfit. And I can call my teammates, and that time there wasn't too much science training, thankfully. Towards the middle of my career, science came into it. But I recall some of my teammates as we were running around that dark field, and they just placing their hand on my shoulder. And some of those guys were the nastiest individuals that you could meet playing in the back line. But they placing their hand on my shoulders, they were sailing past me, and they didn't really need to say anything, but I knew exactly what they meant. That, yeah, you know, it's good to have you back, and we have your back here, and we're here for you. Through all of those different things, through my own efforts, through the absolute kindness of others, I was able to recover my well-being, and get back to living, and not just surviving, but to actually thriving in my life again.
Yeah. How long were you at home for, Conor? In your bedroom, or out, you know, not able to go out?
Yeah, I'd say it would have been, you know, it would have been kind of locked away in my room, I would say, for the bones of, you know, between 9 to 12 months, I suppose, around that period there.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what it would have been.
Okay. Lynn?
What occurs to be there, sorry, is that, you know, this happened a while back, but the memory is so vivid, lucid, like it's, when you're talking about it, it could have been yesterday, that feelings that you have about it. And one of the things, actually, I just wanted to, because one of the things that you say, right, in all of your stories is the conversation has to change. And I suppose just in relation to Niall's story there, I want to know, like, what does it need to change to, based on your own story? What do you think it needs to change to now? One of the reasons we're having this webinar, I guess.
So like I often ask the question when I go to speak at events. I say to people, if you think of the term physical health, what comes to mind? And they speak of energy, they speak of nutrition, they speak of diet, really positive things. But if you ask them about mental health or emotional health, they speak of depression, they speak of anxiety, they speak of suicide. And so there's almost a crisis element that's automatically associated with your emotional health. And I think it's important as well for me to say that, you know, for me, depression, I would describe that it's been fiercely compassionate for me. And what I mean by that is that it's been fierce in the sense of that it's over the years, it's brought me to my knees, like to the absolute depths of despair, but compassionate in a way that it wasn't trying to kill me, but it was definitely trying to kill the inner life that I was experiencing, or the image that I had of myself, the absolute sense of worthlessness, the huge insecurities, the how my identity was so tied up in my sport and in my studies, and that if I was doing well in those, that I felt good about myself, how I was living somebody else's life and not my own. And the poet David White says that the soul would rather fail at its own life than to succeed at someone else's. So I think my experience with my emotional health has always and continues to be about guiding me towards my truth. You know, the best GA coaches that I've been engaged with, and the best therapists that I've engaged with, you know, they don't operate from a position of wanting you to necessarily feel falsely good about yourself, or to feel bad about yourself, but about guiding yourself and helping you to find your truth. And that maybe for me and maybe for others, that their experiences with their emotional health and their toxic levels of anxiety and toxic levels of depression, that maybe it's coming from the part of you that loves you the most. And if you want to call that soul, that maybe it's your soul. And I often wonder that if it's true for me, that depression forced me down a path that I didn't want to go on, or brings me back on a path to where you're, the greatest addiction in the world isn't to alcohol or isn't to drugs. It's to the opinions of other people, that people live their lives through the eyes of other people, and that they're not living their own lives, but see themselves and their sense of self and their worth through the eyes of other people. And how wonderful for me that depression forced me down that path, where I was able to throw off the shackles and throw off the cages of the unlived life that I was living, and where I was able to come into harmony with my real self, and to begin to see myself from the inside out. And it's amazing when you come to the world from that place. And it's not that I live there all the time, but I have a strong sense of it, a lot stronger sense than when I was a younger person. But when you come to the world from that place, it's no longer a test to be passed, but almost a playground to be explored. And so I think, I'd say to you, Elaine, I know that you had your own experiences with cancer, and I'm wondering, in relation to those experiences that you had, I often meet people, or I talk to people maybe that have a terminal illness, and they say that the illness, it was the first time in their life where they could take off the mask that they were living, that life of silent misery and quiet desperation that they were living, that living someone else's life that they were experiencing, and that their illness allowed them, almost gave them permission to actually finally not be that person anymore and to be themselves. And I'm just wondering, from your own experiences with cancer, and there's obviously an emotional health element that goes with that. How was that for you?
Yeah, like when you're saying there about your depression being fiercely compassionate, I can relate to that. From the cancer is fiercely compassionate, in that it was, look, I was very lucky with my cancer, right? It was very treatable. Okay, prognosis was good, but and I could deal with the physical side of it, but the psychological side of it is what was the growth aspect for me. And you were talking there, I wanted to say, oh yeah, it woke you up. Like cancer woke me up. So I can relate to what you're saying there about that. But it was something I wanted to ask you more about, and it's to do around the language and the hashtag. We're using the hashtag talk to someone, right? And you've spoken about it a lot there, and how you dealt with speaking to someone. But I think we have to look at that a little bit more, right? Because it's easy to say it, but it's not easy to do it.
Yeah.
Right? It's not easy to take that first step and either make a call or text somebody, or it's really hard to do that. And I think it's helpful maybe for everybody to talk about what's the reluctance there, because you touched on it there already, right? The reluctance around picking up the phone and making a call. And I think that takes courage and strength. That's the first part of the journey, is to see, okay, something's not right. I need to talk to somebody. And what that courage and strength that you need to talk to someone.
Yeah, so it's we've, as human beings, we've traveled to the highest and lowest parts of the earth. We've traveled to far off galaxies, and we're now going to Mars and all of these wonderful places. But we've only begun to scratch the surface of our own interior and inner worlds, and And because of that, it's nearly a terrifying thing for people to take that step. You know, there's a lot of talk about working out and working out in gyms and all of that, but there's very little about working in.
Yeah.
And there's a wisdom in that. There's a wisdom in that for human beings, because it can be threatening and dangerous. Tara Brach, a famous psychologist, she often asks, you know, what are you unwilling to feel? And as human beings, there's a lot of parts of us inwardly that we're terrified of feeling. And of course, the danger is if you ask somebody else how they're feeling, then it poses a challenge for yourself to maybe have to touch into something that might be going on for you. So the first step always for anybody, whether you're an individual, a parent, a teacher, a coach, the first step is to work on yourself, because you can only see in other people what you can see in yourself, and talk to someone. It's a really interesting term, talk to someone or talk with someone, because it's a two-pronged. It's you taking the first step yourself. And again, as I said, I've played in the full forward line. I've played with lots of injuries in my career, and it takes a bit of courage to play in there with I won't call them animals to play inside in the full back line, right? But they're not. They're rough enough old individuals anyhow, right? But the message needs to ring out loud and clear from the event tonight. It needs to ring out loud and clear around Courcey Rovers and West Cork that there's amazing strength and courage and kindness in taking that first step. The people that I meet on my travels that tell me about the steps they've taken when it comes to their own emotional health, it's far more courageous than anything I've seen on a hurling field, and I've played in it for a long period in my life. It's far more courage in relation to that. Or those people that have leaned into others to see how they are doing. And if you think of the word, you know, listening, and if you think of the word listen, an anagram of the word listen is silent. And very often, what's all that somebody needs is somebody to just ask the question, and for you to listen, to be silent. But real listening is about more than just being silent. You know, I've an aunt there, and she's the best in the world, but I know when I'm talking to her, she's only waiting for you to shut up so that she can start. But real listening demands courage on your behalf. And real listening is about leaning in softly to someone else and be willing to be vulnerable and change yourself.
Conor, can I ask you? Sorry, Conor, cut across here. Right? Can I ask you about the rewards, right? Because there's a real fear in that, in talking and exploring yourself and going inward, right? Like, can we just stay on the rewards, right? So my understanding, and from my own life experiences, from being around others, is that when people get more comfortable in this area and they learn more and they grow more themselves, that they can begin to see more options. They can begin to see more solutions and see the world in a different way. And the narrative that has been keeping them down, they can begin to challenge that. Was that something like your experience, or would that be one of the rewards, upsides that you'd see from it?
So could I ask the question to you in relation to your own experiences of playing GA? You would have obviously played with Courceys all your life, but you would have played an element of inter-county hurling as well. Courcey Rovers wouldn't have had too many inter-county players over the years. So is there anything in relation to the question you're asking? Is there anything relative to your own life, Niall, where you might be able to speak to that?
So there would, and it's a story from a long time ago, and I'm comfortable to talk about it now. For a long time I wasn't. So in 1999, I was the club's first Cork minor since Chris Cochran in the 50s, and Chris has sadly left us recently. So there was an awful lot of expectation came with that, mainly on myself, by myself. So I'd have excelled as a teenager with Courceys, and you know, when I had a vision of what it was going to work out for me on the minor stage, and it was going to be a springboard for me to move on. The reality was that I peaked at between the ages of probably 17 and 22, and was never physically able enough or athletic enough to reach the higher level anyway. But that's in hindsight. But I worked hard to make the minors. I got onto the minors, and on the day we went there, it was up in Limerick playing Clare, and there was, everyone from a hurling perspective that I knew was going. There was some minibuses going. There was, a lot of attention on it, and we went there, and it just didn't work out. Right, I was taken off after 17 or 18 minutes. Didn't get into the game, and I can remember sitting down on the bench. I was actually sitting behind Frank Murphy, just as I was, right, and I just couldn't believe what was after happening. I literally could not believe just what had happened in front of me, and that it had come to this. And the I can remember an uncle of mine who wouldn't have gone to many games, my aunt's husband, who wouldn't have gone to many games, and he actually walked in front of the dugout, kind of maybe leaving one section of the stand to another section of the stand. He kind of walked out onto the side of the pitch, and I saw him there, and he goes, well, if that man is there at the game, everyone is here. And I felt like such, it just took all the good out of the occasion, and it sucked all the value out of what I was after achieving. And it took a long time for me to even see that what he did was an achievement in itself. But the narrative that I had to deal with for a while was, that you'd failed, like, or, that it was actually more of a negative than a positive, even though I was the first person in 50 years to do it. It was almost introverted like that way, So, but I can remember you talked about kindness. You talked about kindness. The two pieces to that. Remember coming home that evening with my parents down from Limerick. It was long spin down, and I was upset, and my parents were upset for me, like, right? And that's the way it was on the night, right? And I settled in at home kind of over the next couple of days, and people were kind of giving me some space or whatever. There was no one saying a word to me, really. And my aunt rang me, and she's not really a hurling woman at all, my dad's sister, Nora. And she rang, and she's my mother put her on to me, and she went on to tell me, that there was people up there, and they're looking down at you, and you're their hero, that you'd made it, and that you'd even got that far, and that I'd hate to think you're upset. But she came at that conversation with such kindness that I can recall it 22 years later. I can recall the words she used. It was like you spoke about there, Conor, the driving in the car, and you're after hearing something from that guy Tony that gave you nourishment. That's how I felt with that level of kindness that I got from that phone call, right? So that was just one example on the kindness, and not to go on too long now, but the over time I've learned to be able to balance out what that narrative is, that narrative of failure, and again you alluded to it. You alluded to it, Conor, on the real obsession with what others think, and kind of associating your value with outcome. It's a dangerous thing, and it can often lead to a poor narrative in your mind and a lot of self-criticism. So, through life, I've been able to educate myself, and through my experiences and my own growth, I've been able to do a lot better at that. But
it's a continuous work in progress. There's none of us the finished articles, and I think look, that's great honesty, Niall, and I think it's something that everybody on the call will really appreciate. You and Board Elaine earlier speaking like you did about the the emotional impact of experiences on our life. And I think by we sharing these stories, I think our stories are replicated, are relevant for an awful lot of people. And by sharing them, you give that hope and that encouragement to others that actually what's going on for them is, and why should you embark on this journey now? Like life is so short. Like it's so short. Like if you get about 80 or 90 years, you'll be doing well, right? And like I think the latest estimation has that the world is about, or the universe is about 13.8 billion years old. So if you take 13.8 billion and think you get about 80 or 90, like it's minuscule. It's gone by so quickly. My grandfather was 98 years of age when he died, but he'd phenomenal health up until he was 96. He worked driving a lorry all his life until he was 76 years of age. He had 14 kids. He smoked every day of the week. He had a few pints every evening when he came home. He'd done all the things that you'd say wouldn't lead to a long life, but he had a really long life. But a superman. And I can recall when he was 96 and he was starting to get some difficulties with his memory and things. But I can remember through his confusion one evening, he saying to me, "Conor, I'm 96 years of age, and my life's gone by like a flash." And I just thought to myself, like 96 years is a long time to be on the planet, but still for him it was gone by so quickly like that. And Mary Oliver says, like, what will you do with your one wild and precious life? And there's a certain, there's a certain joy in remaining hidden as a human being, but it's a terrible tragedy if the real you was never found. And I think one of the deepest longings inside in all human beings is that desire to be who they are themselves, to be their own person, to live their own life. And I would say that there's more than a significant amount of human beings that are living lives of silent misery and quiet desperation. And so one of the reasons why, it was one of the key reasons for me coming forward telling my story, is that life is so short that if you can embark on that journey inwards, where you begin to feel the things that you're unwilling to feel, where you begin to live your life from the inside out, where you see yourself, your worth and value as like there's about 7.5 billion people in the earth, and you can travel the world and you'll never meet another person exactly like yourself. Like there'll never again be another Elaine Hayes, and all the people that have gone and all the people that come after us, there'll never again be another Elaine Hayes. And like I read a bit about quantum physics, and quantum physics, I know I follow about 5% of it, but I do my best to read it. But all the quantum physics shows is that we're children of the stars, that the oxygen we breathe, the carbon in our bones, the iron in our blood, that they're all remnants of stars that exploded years ago. I used to do a lot of stuff with Brizzy, and he used to have this program, You're a Star. And he said, "Brizzy, I'm a fucking star as well. We're all stars, right?" And but when we see ourselves through the eyes of other people, it darkens that radiance and that light that's inside us. I'd be interested to hear the Q&A panel after us about why do they think that radiance goes out of us as young people, and we lose that. And so it's the most difficult and challenging journey that you'll ever go on, and that journey inwards, and that touching in to that inner pain and that emotional baggage that we all carry. But by God, it's the most rewarding and liberating journey that you'll ever embark on.
Yeah. Conor, I want to move on to Claire opened the show. She spoke about hope. We've spoken about hope a few times now. And for me, there's an untold, it's told, but I don't think it's told enough. There's an untold story that should be celebrated a lot more, right? That you alluded to, you were at home, like you had left school, you were on a mission, you were 20 stone, you were in your room.
Not far off though, again, I tell you.
You're in emotional distress. I know. Like you were in a bad situation, right? And not alone did you get well, which is a huge achievement in itself. Not alone did you you know, come out to have a life and have a career and all those things. You got back into your sport. You didn't just play the sport. You didn't just get on the field. You got on the field at a very, very good Cloyne team that played 3 county finals in a row. Like excellent team that, you know, we're unlucky. We won't go to that. And
I need to go to therapy again now if you start talking about that.
And made it all the way. Like Kimmick, you were a top player in the club game in Cork, and then made it all the way to Crow Park on All-Ireland final day in 2006, coming off the bench into that game. Like, I don't know, there's a guy called Terry Fox, ran across Canada with a prosthetic leg. For me, that's probably the most amazing sporting feat I've ever heard of, right? 5,000 kilometers across Canada with a prosthetic leg. But after that, the most amazing story I've heard is yours. That not alone did you get back, and not alone did you reach a really high level, you actually got to, you know, the All-Ireland final and All-Ireland final day. And to your own admission, you're not athletic. So, like, you have the advantage of being a really big man, but like you're not Sean Og, a fella who was super athlete or anything like that. So like you had so much going against you, right? So I'll come to my question. That like when you were working with Tony and you were helping to change your narrative and working through your therapy, when did the light come in for you, where you could see that bit of hope and see that there was a path for you, that it wasn't necessarily the path that you had been so consumed with, that there was a new one? What did that look like, and when was it?
I don't know. Could I tell you? Could I give you any exact time or anything around that, right? But I do remember clearly one morning we used to train early in the morning with Cloyne at 5:30, and I recall one morning after the session finished, we'd all be putting on our gear then to go to work and all the rest of it. But I just hung around, and I remember sitting on the beach, and the sun was beginning to emerge, and it was giving visibility to the golden sand beneath our feet, because before that we'd been running in the dark. And I just recall, and again I get a bit emotional when I remember this moment, but I recall looking out at the water and looking at the sun rising in the sky, and feeling so at home in myself, and at the same time feeling so alive and enthusiastic about life. And the comparison between then and maybe 12 or 18 months before then, where I was in the absolute depths of horror and all the things that went with that. And so that's why, you know, I don't call depression my friend lightly, because I know that for some people it results in them sadly ending their lives. But depression forced me down that path that I didn't want to go on. And I think we need to create the environments, we need to create the psychological safety so that Elaine doesn't have to experience cancer for her to get the permission to use her words, wake up, that I don't have to come close to ending my life before I woke up and saw the light. And that's where we all, I think, share that responsibility as individuals by firstly dealing with our own stuff. You know, I think it was Gandhi, or I might be incorrecting it, but you know, he said that human beings were powerful beyond measure, and it's not our darkness that we fear most, but our light, because we are powerful beyond measure. And so the responsibility lies first with the individual, but then out into the wider community, where we all share that responsibility to create the psychological safety for people to be able to emerge from what's lying hidden and to giving it visibility. And as I say, I know this might sound like happy clappy kind of words, but it was something that was very real in my life, and was a fundamental part of me. And like, what could be better than that, than by you dealing with dealing with your own stuff, you create the environment and you create the space and you create the light so that others can feel safe with dealing with theirs. It's a massive responsibility we share, that we have as individuals and people within the community, but it's a wonderful one as well.
Yeah. Elaine?
Yeah, that leads me on to, like, very beautifully, Conor, thank you, to keeping well and how we keep well. And I think I'm conscious of the time now, but I think it's important that we do look at that. Like, you know, when you said there about looking after yourself first, you know, and then you can look after others. You know, I have a routine that when I was going through cancer, I kind of developed in order to, I call it my maintenance plan, or my boulders. First things first. And if I don't have my hour to myself in the morning to do what I need to do to look after myself, I'm not really that, you know, I'm difficult to live with, right? So,
I heard that.
so if you know that never occurred to me before I was sick. Never occurred to me that was self-care. Like, you know, I always thought self-care, had a conversation with my friend there, self-care was like treating yourself. No, right? Self-care is, what is it? That's my question, right? To you, probably.
Yeah.
We want to talk to the audience about how, you know, we're all going to have challenges, approaches. It's not like we have one growth spurt and that's it. This is the journey, and it has its ups and downs and loads of growth spurts. So, like, you know, recognizing those challenges as they reappear and then keeping ourselves well. Like, I'm wondering, I'm really curious, how do you keep yourself well, Conor? What are the things that...
I don't know, am I the best advertisement now when it comes to, like I said, at very early doors, I fail regularly in this area. But I have to say, I'm not religious, but Jesus Christ said, he said, love your neighbor as yourself.
Yeah.
And as yourself was the best kept secret in Ireland, where there's nearly a kind of a thing where people say that loving yourself is a selfish thing to do, but actually loving and nurturing and caring for yourself. And I don't always do it for myself, right? But doing that is actually the most unselfish thing that any human being can do, because by doing that, you put yourself, you mirror, you can mirror for what other people might need for themselves. That and I don't know, can I give anything prescriptive, but I do just know that when I'm caring for myself, and I'm doing the things to nurture my own emotional health, managing my schedule, eating well, exercising, communicating and sharing what's going on for me with somebody or with others, when pain arises, not running away from it and trying to avoid it, but to sit and be with it and see what it's trying to tell me, whether that be fear or anxiety or whatever that might be, to sit and to be with it and see what it is, what's going on for me at that moment in time, and what is it that it's trying to tell me. I know that when I'm doing all of those things, that I'm a far better friend. I'm a far better member of my workforce. I'm far more productive in my work. I'm a better brother. I'm a better son. When I'm doing all of those different things. And so looking after yourself, being kind to yourself and loving yourself, it starts from there. And if your cup is full, then you have an awful lot more to be able to give to other people.
Yeah. No, well said, Conor. Now I've Carol Marie here on the behind the screen pinging me here to say we've 5 minutes, right? So,
okay,
Conor,
okay.
In that, right? What are the your closing comments and takeaways for the audience, right? What key messages do you want them really, really have in their minds leaving today?
So firstly, this is forget about governments and all the rest of the things that they need to be doing. What will most transform the conversation around emotional health in Ireland is what we're doing here this evening. It's Elaine sharing her story. It's Niall, you generously sharing yours. It's the Q&A that'll come after us and the amazing things that I can imagine is going to come out of that. That's where the real change is going to happen, at local, at individual and local and community level. So fair play to you all that have put on this event. I know John Hines and Carol Marie and all the team in the background there that have done amazing work and won't be here on anything tonight. But what's gone on tonight is a really good thing. And there's a Buddhist saying that says a single candle can light 1,000 more. And by what you're doing tonight, Niall, Elaine, and all the rest of the team, you're lighting a lot more candles in ways that you won't imagine. We need to transform the conversation around emotional health. Real emotional health is not about the absence of distress or depression or toxic levels of stress or anxiety. That's a part of emotional distress, and it's a very fundamental and important part of emotional health. But real emotional health is not so much about the absence of that, but far more about the presence of a sense of your own unique worth and value as a human being, independent of your successes or your failures, or whether you have a job or don't have a job, or whether you have a boyfriend or children or a wife or whatever it might be, that your sense of self comes from the inside out, that you're living your life from the inside out, that you're able to give expression to that amazing depth that exists within us as human beings. That's what real emotional health is. And that's where the conversation needs to get to, because a lot of people don't think that they have emotional health, or don't think that emotional health is for them. But I think as one of the people said in the call the other night, you know, we all have emotions. And I think it was always the case, but now more than ever, in a world of where disruptions and change will happen at a level and a frequency and an intensity that's never happened before in human history, investing in your emotional health, getting to know yourself and the ability to deal with change, I think they'll be the most important skills that human beings will need going forward. And it'll be the wise individual, the wise parent, the wise teacher, the wise GA club, the wise government that will focus on that area. And it's not a nice to have, but an urgent thing. And just to finish quickly with a quick story, I was asked to go to Galway a few years ago to speak in the cathedral. There was a lot of suicides in Galway at the time, and I spoke at the event. And after the event, we walked around to the different areas, and the bishop was blessing the different areas where people were sadly ending their lives. And as I was walking along, this man came over to me, around the same age as yourself now, Niall, I'd say, a bit older than me, like, you know, I'm still only a young lad, but anyhow, an ordinary man came over to me and he said, introduced himself. He said, Conor, look, that's my wife over there. He said, my 2 young kids, my son and my daughter. And he said, do you mind if I share a story with you? And I said, yeah, absolutely. So he told me that a few months before that, he said he was a very successful man in his life in terms of had his own business, was financially independent, didn't have any money that he owed to anybody, had a lovely family and all the rest of it. But a number of months before that, there was this darkness that was after coming into his life. And because he was a man, because of that stigma that's around seeking support and help, he felt that he couldn't go and get that help that he maybe needed. And it just started to grow and get darker and darker inside him. And he said one morning he got up like always and got the breakfast for the kids and his wife, put his briefcase into the back of his car and dropped his 2 kids to school. And he was driving along the road to where he was going to be driving to a place where he was going to kill himself. And he was listening to the radio, and on the radio was Jim Breen from the Cycle Against Suicide. And the Cycle Against Suicide is a lovely saying, it's okay to not feel okay and absolutely okay to ask for help. And the first time Jim said that, it meant nothing to him, carried on driving, and the interview was going on with Jim on the radio. And the second time that Jim said it, meant nothing to him. But the third time Jim Breen said it, whatever happened, you asked the question about when did you see that moment, when did you see the light? Whatever it was, when Jim Breen said it for the third time, it seemed as if the words finally seeped through the clouds of darkness that was surrounding him. And he stopped the car and he rang his dad. And he said, Dad, you need to come and collect me. And his father came and collected him. He broke down and he told him the story. And he went away and he got the support that he needed. And here he was walking with his wife and his kids. So what's to say tonight at this event, or something that Courcey Rovers will do in the future, or Kinsale, or everybody else that's listening to this call? What's to say that to the outer world, it looked like that man and everything was perfect in his life? So what's to say that for the people on this event this evening, or if there's something done in the future, what's to say that it's not your own wife or son or daughter or mother or father or uncle or aunt hear the message that it's okay to not feel okay, and that it's absolutely okay to ask for help. And because of that, a wife will wake up tomorrow morning and her husband will be still alive. A young son and daughter will come into their dad's bedroom and he's still about. That's the power of we having these conversations. That's the importance and the absolute need for us to continue to develop and grow the conversation around our emotional health and our emotional worlds. That's the impact that events and conversations like this will have, that those people that need those conversations, whether you're at the extreme end of it or whether you're living lives of that silent misery and quiet desperation, that you can emerge from that with simple things like conversations here. That's the impact of it. And Gautama Buddha, the founder of Buddhism, when he was trying to capture how short our lives are, he said, this existence of ours is as transient as autumn clouds. To watch the birth and death of human beings is like looking at the movements of a dance. A lifetime is like a flash of lightning rushing by like a torrent down a steep mountain. A flash of lightning, like my granddad, 96 years of age, a flash. So we've stopped, Niall, Elaine, all the people on the call, you know, we're children of the stars. We've stopped on our cosmic journey to encounter each other, to meet, to love, to share, to play GA, to do activities in Kinsale, to do all the different things that we do. If we can share our time, that brief time that we have, if we can share it with more kindness, and I certainly need to be more kind in my life to myself and to others, but if we can share it with more kindness, with more honesty, with more love, with more talking and expressing about our emotional health, you know, then I think when we get a bit older, we'll be able to look back and say, you know what, during our time was worthwhile on this earth. That yeah, we no longer will we allow the hidden issues of the past where people had to suffer in silence. That in our time, on our watch, we made sure that nobody around in our environment had to suffer in silence. And yeah, so yeah, that's we need to grow the conversation, and we need to keep it going for each other. So thanks so much to everybody for inviting me. It's been wonderful to be here, and I'm sorry enough for getting a bit emotional. Well, actually, I'm not. I'm glad that I am, because it's important. And look, it's over to the Q&A team, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what will come out of that. Elaine, Niall, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Conor.
That you're
Yes,
here.
Conor. So we have. Sorry, Lynn.
Empowering words, and I am, as always, your stories are very meaningful, and you give great ease to everybody around it. So thank you so much. We're very grateful for you.
Thanks.
I echo Elaine's words there, Conor. Right. So on behalf of the team and the people at Courceys and all on the call, we'd like to thank you for your honesty tonight and your time in helping us prepare for the event and shape the event with us. Right. So thanks very much.
Great.
So folks, what we'll do now is we're going to play a short video, and on that video there's going to be some important information and messages that you may find useful at some time. Please take some time to screenshot or photo the information when it comes on your screen. Alternatively, this information will be shared after the event, and it also will be played at the end of the event. So you will have another opportunity. Thank you very much.
Hi there, I'm Michal Hines. In my role as a local GP and committee member of Kinsale Youth Support Services, I was delighted to be asked to help support this community wellness event being organised by Courcey Rovers GA Club. In my role as a GP, I have certainly seen how it's been a tough year for the community across all sectors and all age groups due to the implications of COVID-19. We have seen how this has impacted on many people's lives in difficult and challenging ways. With regard to this event, I was particularly interested to see that hope, resilience and support through talk was being promoted as being a good way of coping with difficulties in life's emotional journey, and I suppose from our point of view in the current difficulties that many people are experiencing. In terms of the profile of the event, I was also interested to see that the hashtag talk to someone was being promoted. Talking is a very, very important way of dealing with emotional distress and with distress of all types. I suppose from the point of view of talking, who can one talk to? The options are including nearest and dearest family and friends, which can be sometimes very useful, but in other cases may be quite difficult. There are also options of talking to sports coaches, teachers, other people we may be dealing with on a daily basis or on a weekly basis, while there are many professionals whom one can talk to also. In this group I would include people such as counsellors, Gardaí, GPs, priests, anyone that people may feel is available for a listening ear. With regard to listening, there are also some organisations which specialise in this area. Locally, I would encourage people to consider contacting KYSS, Kinsale Youth Support Services, or on a national basis. There are options such as talking to the Samaritans on a 24/7 basis or Pieta House. These are all very useful organisations in terms of providing a listening ear and support for people who are going through difficult times. With regard to opening that conversation, when you have decided that you want to discuss a difficult situation with someone, it can be tricky. I would suggest opening with a line like, "I'm struggling and I need a bit of help." That will make it quite clear to the person concerned that there is a specific requirement to listen and to provide support. It is really important that we as a community open ourselves to these conversations. And I suppose that is one of the big benefits of this community-wide meeting. Talking and remaining connected generally is an important element of coping with these current difficult times, together with the general advice of remaining active, eating well, minding ourselves, and not being too tough on ourselves, I suppose. The times are tough and we need to look after ourselves and each other. In this regard, I would certainly commend Courcey Rovers GA Club for organising this excellent event, together with the input from Kinsale Community School and Kinsale Youth Support Services. I think it will benefit all of us as a community, and I would wish everybody well for the future.
Many thanks, Niall and Elaine, for an engaging interview, but a very special thank you to Conor. I met you online, I suppose, before this event, and your story and message resonated with me on many levels. I think everyone will agree that you have given us many take-home messages from your experiences, and I thank you for sharing that with us tonight. Before I start the Q&A, I suppose I want to note there are no gurus here. We are all on the path of learning, and we will discuss the take-home messages from Conor's key points and the impact they've had on us. I'm going to reintroduce the panel to you now, for those who maybe missed it at the beginning. So please welcome Geraldine McTavish, Diversity and Inclusion Officer in the Community Health Department of Croke Park, Jo Rice, Health Support Worker from Kinsale Youth Support Services, Gary Maloney, Courcey Rovers Juvenile Chairman, Linda Collins, Courcey Rovers and Cork Senior Camogie Captain, along with Charlie Granger, a 6th year student in Kinsale Community School. Thanks to all of you for taking the time to be part of this evening. Are we ready? Gary, I'm going to start with you. You'll have to
Thanks, Claire. Thanks.
I think that was a very interesting conversation there between Elaine, Conor and Niall, and I suppose one of the things, Gary, is that Conor highlighted the inevitability of us all experiencing some form of emotional crisis at some point, and no one is immune to this, no matter the person or the circumstances. What do you think, I suppose, are the emotional predicaments that one might stumble upon as an ex-player? I'm going to go with a middle-aged man, like, you know, I'm a middle-aged woman. I'll put you in the same category as myself. Does any of that resonate with you personally, what Conor said there?
Oh, completely, Claire. You know, it's look, from an ex-player, you go from being with people, you start hurling or football at 4 or 5 years of age. You spend the next 30 odd years with the same group of lads, building relationships, building friendships, and suddenly it stops. And I suppose there's a vacuum then. You don't get you are getting reward from your sport, from your hurling, and suddenly you're not getting anything back, and it becomes a hole that needs to be filled. And I suppose it's how you deal with that. And look, I suppose life moves on. There's family comes along. Life gets very busy, and suddenly you realize you're not looking after yourself. As Elaine said there, look, she finds it very important to have that hour in the morning to just do her thing. And you know, we got our thing from playing hurling. Suddenly that thing is gone. So you might not realize that you actually need something else, and you just get caught up with life. And there's always something coming along, and you could feel trapped that there's it's not about you. You're getting nothing back, and your confidence can slip, and your self-doubt can probably start creeping in. And look, when you were playing, you always, you know, you were a dependable player. People reassured you, well done, whatever. You're not getting any of that anymore, and you know, you can turn to other things, and maybe unhealthy things, to fill in that void. And I suppose it's important to look. Some of us go back coaching. Some of us, you know, might go GA. You might not be ready to go back to the GA. You might, a running club might be better, or a bird watching club or something. But I find you need something to replace that, and that's very tricky, because you've got so much. It's a life habit that you get from GA, that when it's suddenly gone, it can be very difficult to replace that.
Mm-hmm. I suppose Conor as well spoke, Gary, of the fact that the journey to being able to express your real self is the most challenging, but the most rewarding at the end. Like, from your experience, what would you see as the main hurdles that could impede one's journey towards emotional wellness? I
suppose, to be fair, Claire, look, as a middle-aged ex-player, I would say fear would be a big one. It's fear on several levels. I suppose fear of what people would think of you. And look, when you were playing, you could have been that strong, commanding centre back, or you're, you know, that bustling full forward, that, you know, you were tough and you were able to handle the full backs. But now you're not that person anymore. That identity is gone from you. And I suppose you could be afraid to show weakness, and you could feel vulnerable to really express who you are now. And it's just to get the confidence and the courage, I suppose, to reach out. And also your circle of friends, you know, you're finished playing with 5, 7, 10 years, life moves on, people get busy, your friendships maybe wane, you don't talk to the lads as much as you used to. And maybe you just don't have that trusted friend or trusted coach that you can reach out to. That, you know, and maybe from another point of view, we need to look at ourselves, and maybe we could be that person that someone could be reaching out to.
Absolutely. I suppose that leads nicely into, you know, the kindness element that Conor and Elaine and Niall spoke about. I suppose I've listened to Conor in the past, and I heard him use a quote previous to tonight from the philosopher Rousseau, saying there is no greater wisdom than human kindness. And kindness is a key message from the conversation that I just heard anyway. But could you reflect, I suppose, on how kindness enabled your promotion of wellness in your role as a coach, now that you're back in that role?
Yeah, I suppose, look, I thought about, you know, talked about getting something back from playing hurling, and when that stopped, there was a void. I suppose when you go back coaching, you're giving something back, and that has certainly replaced what you were lacking when you finished up hurling. And again, it's great to I suppose a lot of coaches, they're not maybe trained enough in these skills, and maybe recognizing kids and changes of behavior and things like that, and promoting this kindness in younger people. I suppose and also maybe, and Conor touched on it, he said, speak to the kids and be welcoming, and if they have something to say, listen to them, hear them, take the time to listen to them. Don't just pay them lip service. And that's
sorry, I cut you off there. Keep going.
Nurture their confidence as well. Confidence, I would think, is a big thing. Confidence and courage, and they need to be
I suppose I was actually lead into that question there around what you're saying, Gary, because I think it's really important, like, to teach a child an act of kindness that you do for someone, should never be underestimated. It could be enough for them to get through the following day. It could be that breakthrough that they were talking about. And when you treat a person well, you always win. But I suppose that goes back to your underage role. Like, how do you foster a culture that of that kindness that promotes the emotional well-being from the underage perspective? And I know you spoke about the skills, so just to hone in on that a little bit more, I suppose, on the coaches that are being coached.
Yeah, look, I would think the coaches, there's you start coaching, it's you're under pressure to get the session running right, you're focusing on the skills, and I suppose, look, we're probably not trained, or maybe not everyone is aware that we need to be more focused on looking at the softer skills of the game, of life as well. I suppose it's creating an environment is very important, a safe, carefree environment where children can be themselves and express themselves and be comfortable to do that. And fun as well is an extremely important part of that they're in a position that they don't have fear, that they can express themselves and enjoy it. And I suppose sports can teach an awful lot of life lessons, and I found through my sports that a lot of sports mirror life. Life isn't always fair, just like sport isn't always fair, and kids will get experience through the sport that when you lose a match, you'll have losses in life, and it's how you deal with that. And a coach can be very important to a kid to help them, as you said, get over a trouble. And again, how to handle success maybe is just as important. And also that, look, rarely is in life is success due to luck. It's often due to hard work, and kids have to put in a bit of hard work, and sometimes even despite the preparation and the hard work, it doesn't work out. Just like big matches, you do the training, you do the work, it doesn't work out. Life doesn't work out either sometimes, even though you've done the work. And it's just to recognize that and to be comfortable with it, and to, I suppose, a lot of the coaches are probably doing some of this without actually realizing that they're doing it, and how much of a role they can have in young people's lives.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Gary. I think that leads us in nicely, actually, Geraldine. I might bring you in here now. Geraldine, you're so welcome to tonight's event, and thanks for taking the time to be part of the discussion. I suppose I've mentioned already that you're the community, you work in the community and health department in Croke Park as a diversity and inclusion officer. Could you tell our audience, I suppose, really, about that and its important role in the GA?
Thanks, Claire. And just to echo Conor's messages and Gary's message there about the coach as well, and just the emotional well-being of everyone. I suppose a little bit maybe about myself first. Born in Connemara, Cornacatchell is my club. I'm the youngest of 14. So before I went outside my door, I had a football team, which is where you learned your soft skills before you even got onto the football field. 8 sisters and 6 brothers. So I think very competitive, very sporting family. And would have played at senior level and junior level for Galway football. So I immersed in GAA from a very young age, and then also became chairperson of the Ladies Growing in Wales Club, to secretary, to every role you could think of on the committee. And then emigrated, as they say, to Dublin, to the big smoke. And with that, worked with a lot of sporting organisations, from the Irish Amateur Boxing Association to Special Olympics, and now back to the GAA as Diversity and Inclusion Officer. So what I cover there is everything to do with wheelchair hurling, camogie, football for all, special schools, disability, intercultural, LGBT, and all other minority groups as well. Where I sit in the Community and Health Department is the broader part of what we do in the GAA, and Community and Health Department grew out of the needs of our club members. And Colin Regan is our manager in the Community Health Department, and he would have spearheaded the areas that we would have worked in. So our areas of work started off first with the ASAP program, but it's now the substance abuse awareness campaign, as well as gambling awareness, and that has led into other areas like mental fitness, physical fitness, social games. I work predominantly in social inclusion, which is from age 5 up to 105, or like Conor had mentioned, his 96-year-old grandfather. So it is about all of that, as well as youth leadership, green clubs, and also as well as that other areas. The main one in the focus is how we channel a lot of our work. Is called the Healthy Club Program, and through that our logo is healthy bodies, healthy minds, healthy clubs.
Yeah, it's hard to believe, really, you know, when you think of the GAA, and I know the amazing work. And Conor, you know, we had this conversation earlier in the week, and I think we all think of the GAA as the community and the, you know, the bonds that it brings together within communities. But looking at the work that is being done by the GAA in Croke Park is powerful, you know, in terms of the Community and Health Department and your own role. And I suppose the initiative tonight is a very homegrown one here in Courcey's club. It developed organically, but is this something that many clubs around the county and country are involved in? I suppose you linked in there to the Healthy Clubs initiative. So how do you, you know, I suppose the fact that this has happened organically, is it similar to what's happening in terms of the Healthy Clubs?
Yeah, so as I said, a lot of clubs are very different. You're covering rural clubs to city clubs to, and all of these programs are you're meeting the needs of the community where you live, and that's why you're running this tonight. So we've seen that in all the clubs around Ireland, and we've seen that through the Healthy Club program. So it does facilitate you to work on these areas, to think mental fitness, to think physical activity, or like Gary had mentioned, coming back to the GAA after you've left it. So if you had left and gone to work, and then you decided you wanted to come back as a coach, and then you wanted to do other things, there's now social games, social initiatives. But a lot of the Healthy Club program is it's in phase 4. It will go into phase 5. Applications for interest of clubs will open in October, November. It's part of a process where the club applies for it, and the County Health and Wellbeing Committee are part of the selection process, which then leads into ourselves in the Community Health Department, but also the National Steering Committee in Community and Health. And Conor would have been part of that steering committee when it started off once upon a time. So it is that the foundations of where we start all of this. And the Community and Health Department has grown from 3 or 4 key areas to now youth leadership, as well as green clubs and sustainability. So the broad kind of resources have developed because we're meeting the needs of club members and our volunteers. So a lot of the things you would have seen during COVID, where club members would have gone on and driven the car to pick up groceries, to pick up prescriptions, that were part of a lot of people's initiative in the Healthy Club. And a lot of Healthy Club programs run one initiative a year. This year we had the National Inclusion Fitness Day, where clubs joined in and created so many different events, from LGBT events to promotion of mental health, to promotion of physical activity, to doing a fundraiser, a charity fundraiser. So we would have a lot of different events that do come through the health club program.
Brilliant, brilliant. I just want to zone in on one thing you mentioned there, this term mental fitness. I suppose physical fitness is something that's all, generally lined up in the past anyway, when I was growing up in relation to sport, but the mental fitness is just as important, if not more important, than the physical fitness. And I suppose, if we're going to the doctor, if we have a physical ailment, then why wouldn't we be going for an emotional or mental one? What supports would be in place within your department, Geraldine, to assist the clubs in promoting mental fitness?
Yes, so thanks, Claire. So we actually have our national partner is the Samaritans, and they have a workshop called Active Listening, and they also have a workshop and it's called the Huddle. It started off before COVID, and it was getting the team together to have a huddle beforehand and ask the question, how are you feeling today? Where the team talk about it and make it part of the routine of the competitive game or the training session. The people were actually asking. So sometimes it's about the terminology we're using around mental health, and Conor would have mentioned it. We need to make it positive. We need to make it okay to talk to someone. We need to have that safe, trusting environment that you can say, I'm sad, I'm really angry today, I'm frustrated, this happened. So it is having that safe environment, but also giving that person the time to listen. So there is a lot of programs that are run through the Community and Health Department, which is Safe Talk, Active Listening, the Little Things program and awareness campaign. We also have Play in Our Boots and then mental fitness packs, which are resources to look at warning signs of maybe depression, to look at warning signs of self-harm. And then also as well, we link in with community. So part of the Healthy Club program is it's an 18-month journey that a club goes on. And when you register, you go through your county board as well, your health and wellbeing, because they're part of the selection board process. And once they do that, what you'll find is that you'll actually see a lot of the programs like the youth development program, the Safe Talk program, the Smartens program, and you'll also, as well as that, get those resources. They're online as well. You don't need to wait for the Healthy Club program. They are also online as well on the Community and Health website as well. So there's a lot of, but it is about creating, as Conor and Gary had mentioned there, is that safe, supportive, where you're listening to the voice of the younger members of your club. So that means sitting them around the table from the concept of starting off any event or anything you're doing is having them there and giving them that voice, and that they're very happy to be there, but also giving them that terminology. It's okay to express yourself as well. So I think we're starting to see that more and more. The younger generation have got so much of that confidence, whereas maybe that confidence wasn't there when we were growing up, and the environment was, the old cultures, the old environment was seen and not heard, So it is about giving all of us those words as well of how we can express and change the perspective that people have towards mental health. And we're starting to see that in a lot of the Healthy Club programs. As I said, there's now over 100 clubs that are part of that phase 4, and phase 5 opens in October and November.
And I suppose just finally there, Geraldine, Gary spoke in previously there about the promoting wellness at from an underage perspective, and I suppose I liked the Play in My Boots model. I think I've looked into it, and it's a really, really good. There's really good resources there to use, and there's endless resources as Gary would have mentioned in terms of the physical skills of the sport. But I suppose he'd like more resources for coaches to help develop the soft skills. And there, if you're not a member of the Healthy Club program, and many clubs aren't maybe yet, but what supports are there for the clubs who are still, organically working through this for their coaches?
Yes, we work with Jigsaw, who have the One Good coach and model, and they deliver workshops. We also work with Belong To and Kenny, who roll out LGBT workshops as well in the area of mental health. We also have the Dermot Early Leadership, which actually trains up tutors in the club to be able to deliver those soft skills, not only to the young people, but also to the other coaches and the tutors in the club. So those resources, those workshops, those webinars, I do myself, diversity and inclusion webinars, where we do talk about what skill do you need, terminology, what's the warning signs, who you need to contact, and who is the point of contact as well in the community and health department. So there is those workshops, webinars, and also contacting ourselves as well in the community and health department.
Super, and all that's on the website, is it?
Yeah, so when you go into ga.ie /community and health, and you'll find all our resources there, as well as all our contact details as well.
Fantastic. There's some amazing work, Geraldine, and thanks for sharing that with us. I'm going to move over to you, Charlie. So you're very welcome. I think, you know, I want to thank you for coming on tonight, because I know you're you're the youngest member here tonight, and that's difficult. So I want to get your perspective on what you've heard. I suppose one thing we haven't touched on yet, Charlie, is in the current situation we all find ourselves in. You know, a year ago tomorrow we left school, you know, thinking we'd be back in a few weeks, and you know, that was the 12th of March, and we're still in the midst of this pandemic, I suppose, a year later, and it's challenged all of us. How has COVID-19 had an impact on you as a student, and how did you counteract it?
Well, I suppose we're at home every day, all day, you know, and you're missing out on these social interactions that every human thrives on. You know, you're used to going to school and seeing countless numbers of people every day and talking to them, and just by talking, it lifts your mood, and it allows you to, like, everyone has feelings, right? And it allows you to get them feelings out there. And being at home all day, like, it has turned our school life upside down. And like, I think it's very hard now to see the little signs in people where they're struggling with their emotional well-being, they're in a bit of emotional distress, whereas normally in school, like, it's fairly easy to tweak if someone is down or if they're struggling, and like, they may put on a facade that they're okay and that everything's all right, but it is easy enough to tweak in person. Whereas when you're at home all day, it's very difficult to see this, and it allows people to almost suffer in silence, and like, it gives them one less chance to open up to the people in their year, really.
I suppose, like, I'll touch in on that a little bit more, if you don't mind, Charlie. I'm very fortunate that some students come to me and reach out, and in school, all of our teachers are very fortunate in that regard. And I'll allow you call me Claire for tonight, because I know you were worried about having to call me Miss, so you can call me Claire.
Have to make sure,
yeah. They ask for help, you know, and I can help steer them in the right direction. Sometimes, though, they don't need to come to me, and they feel comfortable reaching out to a friend. Has anyone in your friendship group, without giving us the details, you know, reached out to you? And how do 18-year-olds support each other in this present climate?
Well, I think social media is essential in that. Like, everyone is a 5-second text away, and as Conor alluded to earlier, like, that step is extremely difficult. Like, for such a simple task, it is extremely difficult to break down that wall and send that text. But like, at the end of the day, it is a simple task. And I found people my age, like, it's a lot, like, people are a lot more willing to break down that wall now than the older generation. And like, I've definitely got a good few people now in my year just texting me saying, like, geez, I'm really struggling. I'm not okay. Things aren't going my way. And like, that's normal. We're in 6th year. Like, it's going to be a stressful year anyway. But with COVID on top of it, it makes things a lot worse. But I think with social media there, it allows young people to stay interacted, stay connected. And I've had a lot of people texting me saying, nothing serious really, but just like, I'm having a bad day. I've been struggling for a few weeks. And everyone has feelings. So we're all capable of dealing with this. Like you alluded to that as well. There's no gurus in this. Everyone has a feeling, or has feelings, has emotions. So they are qualified to talk about it and listen to it. And just listening for 10 minutes to someone's story, like Conor was saying that as well, just listening and breaking down them barriers is so essential. And I think that social media has played such a good part in that, where I can just receive a text and you can just talk to someone for 10 minutes and it just makes things so much easier.
I think you touched on something really powerful there, Charlie, around the, you know, by not being in school over the last while, it took away one of the outlets, I suppose. And I suppose, you know, we're all wearing masks in school, but I've learned we as people, you know, we all wear metaphorical masks at times in our lives. And the importance of being able to recognize that is an important part of my job, but in everybody's job, that we can pick up on signs that allow us as humans to reach out. I suppose for the younger cohort watching us here tonight, how do your age group, you know, you mentioned social media, but how do you try and remove that mask?
I suppose it all comes back to talking, and like as the hashtag we're using tonight, hashtag talk to someone, and it always comes back to talking. And even if the signs aren't there and someone's putting on a facade that they are okay where they're not, I think especially with the pandemic, it puts more pressure on the person suffering to not suffer in silence, like not suffer in silent misery and quiet desperation, as Conor said. Like, it's social media is really important in that, but like when people wear a mask, I think it makes it a lot more difficult, say, for me to listen to their story, for them to tell me their story. But it's so important to talk to someone, and it doesn't have to be any qualified person. It can just be someone you trust. And I think you talked about an outlet there. I think the GA Club is essential in that. Like, obviously your family is important and who you speak to, but your GA Club is almost like a family you've chosen. So yeah. I think it's essential that people have an outlet, whatever it may be, that you know, busies them in the mind, and it gives them people to open up to and break down that barrier. And with the GA Club there, I think this one, or the Healthy Club initiative and all that, it's essential in the GA Club being there for the person who's struggling. Maybe there's family situation at home and they can't speak about it. The club is there to then where they can go and take off that mask and, you know, open up to the club.
Yeah. Charlie, you're just from even listening to you, you know, you have a very mature head on your shoulders, and I suppose it's a staple of your generation, whereas it wouldn't have been a staple in previous generations. And I know I'm older, but I'm not that much older. But what could your generation teach the older generation? You know, that they wouldn't have had social networks online. You know, the reaching out might have been harder. What could you teach? You know, your own maybe family, older members in your family.
Like, I'd agree 100% there. The older generation, they struggled to break down them walls. Like, from what I've heard, there still is a stigma, but the stigma around emotional well-being at the time was awful, and that people were not willing to break down the barriers because people weren't willing to listen. Like, I think my generation, what they teach the older generation is that, coming back to it again, just talk to someone. Like, it doesn't have to be any unqualified. Just talk to someone, and don't be afraid to break down that barrier. Like, if you tear a hamstring or break a leg, you're going to get it checked, you're going to get it fixed. If your emotional well-being is in the bin, you're going to have to just talk to someone. And just talking to someone is the same as putting a cast on your leg, and suffering in silence is only going to make it worse. Like, if you play on with a broken leg, it's only going to make it worse. Whereas living your life with like emotional distress and suffering and depression, anxiety, all of that, it's only going to make it worse. And as I said, like, it's an extremely difficult task to break down a wall, but it's one that is essential, and it, like, the relief it takes off your shoulders is just amazing. And that's something that the older generation need to be taught, that it's okay to break down the walls. It's not a taboo. It shouldn't be a taboo subject anymore, that you saying, oh, I'm down, I've been struggling for a few weeks, I have anxiety. And I think my generation have broken that stigma down a small bit. Like, it's still a way to go, but they definitely, like, I've definitely found a lot of people have been, you know, just saying, I'm struggling at the moment, whereas speaking to my parents, that would not have been the case before. Yeah. And I suppose, you know, I'm going to give you extra airtime now, Charlie, because you're the only one from your generation speaking here tonight, so I have a few more questions. But there's a quote from, you know, from what you're saying there, it's leading on nicely to the hope, the word hope. You know, there's a quote from Seamus Heaney that I love. It's, you know, even if the hopes you started out with are dashed, hope needs to be maintained. And the current societal atmosphere is one where a lack of hope is often quite palpable. However, as we've heard tonight, that path to wellness is vital, and hope is the mechanism to achieve it. Can you detail how hope is paramount to your emotional wellness? Yeah, like, I'm not gonna lie, it's been tough for the last few weeks. Like, it has looked like there's a bleak journey ahead of us, that we're not going to get out of the pandemic, and it's looked awful. And like, I've had, you know, 6-year holidays cancelled, all that, debs maybe cancelled. So like, hope has been dashed, but at the same time, I'm still 18, my generation are still young. we still have countless years ahead of us. And like, I know it feels like there is nothing ahead of us, but hope is essential. And there is hope there, because like, it may be slow getting out of this, but in 2 years' time, we will be out of the pandemic. And I know it doesn't feel like that, but like at the moment, it feels like there is nothing ahead of us, but there will be, and we will get out of it. And for every person just to feel emotionally well, I suppose, you need hope there. And as well, if you're at rock bottom, really, the only way is up. And like, the only way is up is through hope, to have something ahead of you that like you're striving towards. And I think the J is unreal that way. Like, I know that although we're in the pandemic, it feels like there's nothing. I know I'll still have GA this year, I'll have championship, and I think it's just hope is needed to get out of it, really.
I agree. And, you know, I suppose any glimmer of hope, we have to latch onto it and see the path to a better outcome, you know. There is a perception, I suppose, as you mentioned there, alluded to earlier, that asking for help can be seen as a weakness, and the stigma that's in society around this is very unhelpful. In fact, it's a sign of true strength, really, to ask for help. Conor made reference to the fact that a breakdown can be a breakthrough. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, like, I think the worst thing you can do is bottle it up. And there's a great quote from Claire Shine, she's an Irish soccer player, saying bottling it up doesn't work, because sooner or later the top will fly off. And as Conor said, like, a breakthrough, like breaking through is breaking down, and breaking down them barriers. It's as if you have a wall in front of you, and just by speaking, it's like getting a sledgehammer and knocking that wall down. And instead of bottling it up and keeping it to yourself and suffering in silent misery and quiet desperation, I think it takes extreme courage, bravery to like open yourself up to like unreal vulnerability and say to someone, geez, I'm struggling here. And like saying you've suffered in silence. And I think for someone to say that is a true sign of strength, and to open yourself up to vulnerability, and you're showing like the extreme weakness. Like, it's the one weakness in everyone, but it can be turned into a positive just by speaking about it and just breaking it down and realizing, as Conor said earlier, it's okay not to be okay. It's a bit of a cliche, but it is really true. It is okay not to be okay. And I think just breaking down that barrier is essential.
Yeah, and listen, Charlie, I mean, I think everybody will agree with me here tonight that, you know, your words there, you know, have the hairs standing on the back of my neck, because I wish I had that wisdom when I was 18. So, you know, fair play to you, and thanks for coming on tonight, because your voice has been heard, and it's a really important voice to hear somebody your age talking so openly about this, and encouraging other maybe young people on this call to take that step and to talk to someone. So thanks, Charlie, for that. Linda Collins, no bother. Linda, are you there?
I'm still here. I was getting quite comfortable listening to people there, though.
saving you till now. I'm sure everybody's on the call anyway knows who Linda Collins is, the current Cork Camogie captain, and deservedly so, Linda. I suppose you've achieved what I'm sure was a childhood dream, but in 2018, I read an RTE interview that you did, and it refers to the fact that you never truly believed that you were good enough to be operating at elite level. And you said, am I even good enough to be playing with them? But you changed your approach, you know, you clearly overcame that feeling, and you're now seeing the reward for recognizing that a problem existed, and that was the first step to solving it, taking the first step, I suppose. One of Conor's messages I felt linked to the point that obsessing in what other people think of us causes emotional unwellness. Will you talk us through that experience for you?
Yeah, so I suppose like when you come onto the Cork Senior Camogie team, like everyone is telling you, oh, congratulations, and you're doing great and everything. And, you know, it's almost a surreal experience, because obviously it is the childhood dream and you always want to play with the Cork Senior Camogie team and play with the best. But like when you're there, then you're kind of looking around being like, am I really as good as everyone else that's here? And you don't really believe it. And you're kind of coasting along and you're just there and you're taking it all in. But I suppose they're always the first few years of anything kind of settling yourself in. But then after that, you realize, okay, I'm going to have to put the boot down here and kind of put in a bit of an effort. And I suppose, like as Conor was saying earlier, about the greatest addiction is to live others' lives. And it really is, like when you go up and you see World Cutter, Gemma O'Connor, and you're saying, I need to be like them, I need to be exactly like them. And realistically, I'm probably the smallest person on the pitch, and Orly Cotter is probably the tallest person on the pitch. So I was never going to be what she brought to the team. But I think the most important thing is everyone realised that they had to realise their own strengths that they bring to their team. And it's about the positive self-talk as well. I think it's so important that, like, I remember going out into matches, and it doesn't matter how physically fit you are. You could go out and you could be playing, but you could be standing on the pitch and you're not there mentally, and you're thinking of, who am I going to be marking? And I specifically remember going out in the county final 2018, and I saw Rena Buckley coming over to me, and it was lashing rain, and I had hurt my hand in the semi-final, and I remember thinking, okay, look, this is me done here now. Whereas it could have gone either way for me that day, but I just remember thinking in my head, being like, okay, I'm marking Rena Buckley, my hand's sore, and it's lashing rain, and you think you're giving your best, but looking back now, you'd love to know, was I giving my best? Was my head in the game? Whereas this year, you know, when we were in the county final at half time, I was saying the other day, Conor, when we were on the talk, that at half time, Sasha McCarthy turned to me, and my thing all year was just smile, go out, relax, you know, play the game. And at half time, Sasha McCarthy goes to me, smile, and we went out in the second half of the county final, all smiling and laughing. And just the influence Saoirse had, and Conor was talking about, like, human touch, you know, even the high five and the pat on the back and things like that, they all make such a difference to when you're playing the game. But I suppose, sorry, going back to your point, I went off on a tangent there. Going back to your point about,
you took my next question, but I'll come back to it.
Sorry, going back to the point about trying to be like others. I suppose everyone has their own strengths. Everyone is different. As Conor said, not everybody's going to be the same. Everyone is totally different. So I suppose everyone's going through different things. So when you come down to training and everyone's there to win to win the match or to win the game, you're all on the same page then, in that sense, and that does create a safe environment and make sure that everyone is on the same page then as well, I suppose.
Yeah, and I suppose that would cut across not just in a team sport, but in every aspect of somebody's life, be it, you know, be it in their personal life, be it at work, be it anywhere, that, you know, when you're working, like everybody does as part of a team, everybody brings different strengths to the team. So you can't question what strength you're bringing, and you can't belittle your strength versus somebody else's strength. So it's really important that, you know, you identify your own strength and that you build on that, and and once you believe in that and everybody else believes in that, I think that's really powerful, you know. You learned I suppose you learned to influence your mind. From what you've just said, that's, you know, you influenced your mind to kind of get into that good mindset, and that has led you to a new approach. And you just mentioned there the power of smiling and the power of kindness, which is something I was really taken with when I spoke to you before tonight. How has that power of kindness and smiling, will you elaborate on that for me in terms of how it's shaped your journey?
So my first memory of this is actually 2016. So I broke my thumb that year, and I hadn't played much matches at all. I played the All-Ireland semi-final, and we were going out playing the All-Ireland final. So I just remember thinking, I've nothing to lose here, and I was getting so many texts and everything, and I just remember thinking, I may as well go out and play the game here now. We've come this far. And I ended up being starting, but I hadn't played much. And we had just had the meeting, and everyone was so serious, and we were all inside the meeting and taking a few notes and things like that, and we all got up and we were getting ready to leave the hotel to go to Croke Park, and Damien Murray actually was standing at the door as we were all leaving, and he just looked at me, and I must have looked very serious, because he looked at me and he was like, Linda, put a smile on your face. And I was like, oh, right, okay. And you know, it almost tricked my body into feeling okay, more relaxed. And I suppose then I went out into the game, and I remember we pulled up into Croke Park, and we were in the tunnel, and everyone had their headphones on. And after Damien saying that to me, I just felt really like giddy and excited to go out to play the match. And I took off my earphones, and the whole bus was totally silent, and I was kind of skitting laughing. And Rachel O'Shea, one of my best friends in the team at the time, she looked at me being like, Linda, you know, you can't laugh, you know, we're playing All-Ireland final here. And I just remember thinking, oh yeah, okay, like, you know, serious face.
Yeah.
But I suppose it kind of made me learn the influence that my mind could actually have on me. Like, it didn't matter how physically fit I was, how many games I'd missed that year. I went out into that game feeling so relaxed and so confident. And I suppose this year, I've been improving on it every year. Like, we have psychologists at Cork and everything, and you'd be going through different talks, and you'd learn something from everything. So I suppose I've been building up experience as well. But this year with Courceys, every time we'd have a team talk on the beach on the Saturday before we play championship on the Sunday, I felt like I was always talking, but I didn't mean to be, but I just felt if it helped me, then I wanted to see it might help someone else, you know, in terms of smiling, in terms of the relaxed approach, in terms of visualizing. But I suppose the kindness element then was my first memory of Damien Murray. But then you see other people in the community asking as well, how are you getting on, or how are your matches going, and things like that. It does create a sense of community, this kindness. And like even in terms of Shirley Maloney, Mike Boland's traveling from Carrigtwohill to train us for senior club training, and he's coming down for his own goodwill, to come down in his own enjoyment to train us. It makes you want to be better as well. I suppose the power of kindness is really good.
Just final question, I suppose, Linda. Moving away from the GA for a second, you know, you're a primary school teacher in Kinsale, teaching 5th class, I think you said, this year. And Conor makes a point about there earlier about the responsibility we all share to create psychological safety. Like, how do you nurture 11, 12-year-olds to express their feelings? I suppose I don't remember being taught about my feelings in primary school, but is that a key component of your work?
Yeah, it would be. Like, it's obviously on the curriculum in terms of SPHE and whatever, but I suppose you're always, no matter what you're teaching, if you're teaching about bullying, you're teaching about feelings. If you're doing an English comprehension, you're saying, how does that make you feel? Or what were you thinking? And it's just getting them to tune into how they actually are feeling and getting them to realize their own feelings. I suppose at a very basic level, I felt sad when I read this comprehension, or I felt sorry for someone, a character, throughout the reading. So I suppose it's just getting them to think about it, and even getting them to just realize what they are thinking, because some of them might be going through the emotions and they mightn't even realize it. So I suppose it's getting them to think about it. And as Gary was saying, it's a lot about fun as well, and them actually realizing that they're having fun and they're feeling happy, and this is what makes them feel happy, and this is how they're feeling when they're doing it. So I suppose like we do every week, I wish my teacher knew, and it's really beneficial. You get a lot of things back in terms of how people are feeling, what they're enjoying, and it's just for them to recognize, this is how I'm feeling, and this is when I'm feeling it, and this is what I'm doing when I am feeling it.
So opening the conversation as such, you know, at such a young age, which is brilliant. Linda, thank you so much for your contribution tonight. Ger, right, I'm going to move over to you, because I know I've probably gone over on time. I know we all know we're working with Kinsale Youth Support Services, but I suppose I would say your organisation plays a vital role in not just the youth, but in the family of a youth and the community that they live in. It's a very important service for Kinsale and the surrounding area. How does a facility like Kinsale Youth Support Services encourage and support emotional wellness within the community, Ger?
I suppose, first of all, here, I feel like a bit of a cheat sitting here, in the sense that I'm soccer to the core, and I'm surrounded by GA. Yeah, I suppose what we do really is that kind of we encourage young people to come in, and, like as Charlie said, to open up and actually to kind of just have the conversation. Unfortunately, in my role, it's when someone is coming to me, I go back to what Conor said there, that he was kind of locked in his bedroom for 9 months. That's when I kind of get the call that, like, someone never wakes up in the morning kind of goes, I feel sad, I feel depressed, I'll ring KYSS or ring Samaritans or something. It goes on for a long time. So I suppose our role outside of meeting young people and families is to kind of introduce the community that the emotional health is that you're all qualified. Every person in the community is qualified to have the conversation. To talk to young people, to talk to adults, to talk to anyone. We look at kind of fostering the power of kindness. It's been said a few times. Very important. You do it on the GA pitch, the school corridor. Be kind to someone. It will cost you nothing. It'll be priceless to that person. And I think that's what we need to get out of it tonight. That every single one of us, regardless of backgrounds or anything, we're all in this, and we all just need to be kind to each other, and that will open up the conversation. So, like, I think Charlie touched on it there, like, when we look at our when we look at our physical health, we put a cast on, we go to the GP, everything, we go to the hospital. We come back stronger. We actually, like as a GA player, soccer players, we kind of look and kind of go, yeah, do you know what? No, I'm going to come back stronger. I'm going to build myself, get back on the pitch. Conor Cusack done it. A lot of other players have done it. The difference with the emotional health is that we sabotage it a lot.
Okay.
So when we're feeling sad, we kind of go, oh, I'm no good. I'm not good enough. I don't belong anywhere. Like, we don't do that with our mental health. If we, again, back to the broken leg, we don't whack our leg or bang our leg and go, oh, it's not good enough, you know? So again, it's about building that, I suppose, building the gap between the emotional and the physical, and having that conversation. As we said here tonight, it's talk to somebody. The GA have it, the one good coach, the one good adult. Charlie says a lot of his friends reaching out. It's great. At a younger age, we teach 5-year-olds to look after their physical health. If they get a cut, they know they put a plaster on it. They know how to brush their teeth. It's dental hygiene. So again, we need to start the conversation, start a lot younger. And again, it always comes back to the community.
It does. And I suppose, you know, we've mentioned tonight different things, but, you know, there are those big moments of crisis that some of us and that all of us will face at some point. But we also experience day-to-day stresses, you know, that affect us. And, you know, what can we do, I suppose, to keep those everyday stresses under control? You know, Conor and Elaine spoke of self-worth. How can we encourage others to have self-worth?
It is. I think one of the hardest things in society at the moment is to say no.
Yeah.
When someone looks for you to do something, like maybe your boss in work wants you to do a bit of overtime and stuff, and we're geared to please people. We're geared to please people, and what that does is that it drains ourselves.
Yeah.
It drains ourselves. So it is important that every now and again, that if we say no to people, we're not saying no out of meanness or anything. We're saying no, actually, I need to look after myself here. So, if I'm looking after myself, I can better support you.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I suppose, you know, we've touched on there, you know, the broken leg and stuff. When it comes to physical health, we all know the signposts. You know, but that's one part of our makeup. You know, the brain is the third largest organ in our bodies. It plays a role in, you know, every one of our functions. It controls our organs, our thoughts, our memory, our speech, our movement. You know, if we have an issue with our movement or our memory, we'll go and seek medical advice via the GP. But people don't sometimes, you know, they don't do that if they're having difficulty with their thoughts, even though it's coming from the same organ. I suppose I like at this point, and I've just mentioned the GP, and I think it is worth highlighting, you know, that there are people who might not want to talk about their emotional health to a friend. And I suppose want to point out to everybody on the call tonight that everybody can talk to their GP at any stage, and it's, you know, confidentially. Your GP can work with you in a supportive way, but just to reiterate, it's in a confidential way also, and they're a huge support to the community as well. Jared, just to kind of bring everything together for me here with you, I suppose you're the Kinsale Youth Support Services. Do you have other agencies that you work with? You know, what?
Yeah, so we work with a lot of agencies in relation to a lot of counsellors, privately counsellors, and what we offer there is that we offer a low-cost counselling service.
Brilliant.
So again, it's based in the locality. We work closely with Pieta House. Like I suppose the GPs work with us, the schools work with us. Most important about it, I think, our services is that while we would send a young person or an adult to counselling or to talk to somebody, we also kind of recognise the importance of getting that young person back into the community.
Yeah, okay.
So the counselling is one side of it. So 1 hour counselling a week will help, and it will open the conversation up. The second fold then would be kind of maybe introducing them into the GA, the soccer, the music, the art. Again, it's bringing it back to the community. So yeah, various organisations we work with.
Yeah.
At the moment, what we offer a lot is the low cost counselling. Reduces, I suppose, it breaks barriers a bit, and someone might be able to travel.
Yeah.
You know, so again, it's kind of localized.
Yeah. And I suppose sometimes they don't even need that. And I know from working with students, the work that you do is powerful for them. You know, you're giving them the tools to help them through an element of crisis, I suppose, and to lift the fog. And I suppose, what basic steps would you be advising someone to take that wouldn't be going down the counselling route, just to start the journey to recovery?
Yeah, again, it's the look at themselves and kind of say, actually, I don't want to go down this route. I'll go a next route. Look, there's so many paths we can take. Again, I think it starts with kind of building your environment around you, building a positive support network. You might never use it, but what's very powerful is the fact that you know it's there.
Yeah.
So again, I would say to any young person that you need to surround yourself with positive people. So in your classrooms, whether it's on the field or anything, and again, you mightn't use them, but knowing them there is good enough.
Super. Yeah, that's powerful, Jar. And I think, you know, the role that Kinsale Youth Support Services has played in Kinsale and the surrounding parishes is vital, and that's all thanks to your work. So look, I know we've kind of run out of time. I've gone well over, but I think we could talk all night about the messages we've heard. The slides at the end will be shown again, and they'll have numbers of agencies that you can call if you need support. That will include Kinsale Youth Support Services. Please take them down, keep them, for you never know when you might need them. I want to say a huge thanks to the committee involved in organising this event. It comprises of many, many people, too many to name, but you all know who you are, and your help and support throughout the organisation of this was of sheer commitment. Special mention to, I suppose, to John Hines, who coordinated the committee and the event. So, you know, there's been a lot of outside support across the local parishes as well, which was really important for spreading the message. Thanks to Martin O'Neill from An Post for his support and help, without which the message wouldn't have been received into every home. Thanks to everybody as well who sent us messages of support from across the sporting world in Cork and beyond, and your kindness has not gone unnoticed. To close on tonight's webinar, I suppose I want to bring your attention to 3 words that we used in the title of this event, with the journey. The reason I mention these is that, you know, we're all on a journey. And I figured out it's a journey that goes very quickly. When I see some of the dates of birth coming in for the incoming first years, I think, what was I doing when they were born? And I'd love to say I was 18 and living my best life, but unfortunately that's not the case. The journey we are on, though, can be described as a book with many chapters. Some chapters are short, some are hard to follow, some are over too quickly, and some we can't wait to get to the end of. Not all chapters are good. Some push you to the limits of what you have within you. The great thing about this book is that you can finish one chapter and start the next. All you need to do is turn the page and keep going. It doesn't mean the book can't end well, and the only way to deal with it is to go through it. It just means the story of you, as Conor mentioned, as a person is an interesting and unique one. And all the chapters are interlinked because they're part of the same story, and that's your story. As Robert Frost said, in 3 words, I can sum up everything I've learned about life. It goes on. So turn the page, continue writing your story, and make your way through the difficult chapters, but don't do it alone. Your story is unique. It's one of energy, hope, courage, and every one of us has a story. And although we're all different, the commonality is the idea that we keep going through the difficult times. I'll finish on a quote by Seamus Heaney. If you have the words, there's always a chance you'll find the way. So talk to someone. Take care and good night.
Hello again, everybody. On behalf of Courcey Rovers GAA, I want to say a sincere thank you to everybody who made this event possible. I want to thank in particular our facilitators on the night and to everybody who participated in our panel discussion. More so, I want to thank you for attending. And finally, I would like to remind you of our hashtag, Talk to Someone, and find us on social media for further information and updates. Thank you and good night.